All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into this Easy English Talk podcast episode you sent me.
Okay.
It's called How to Speak Fluent English in 2025.
Yeah.
And gotta say, I'm pretty excited about this one.
Yeah.
Um, who doesn't want to unlock fluency by next year?
Right. It's a pretty appealing idea.
Totally.
Yeah, and what really struck me about this episode was how they kind of reframe English.
Yeah.
It's not just another language. It's like the key to this whole world of possibilities.
I totally agree. And I really like the example they gave about ordering food in Tokyo or connecting with people at an international event.
Yeah.
Like, I think we all just want to have that level of confidence.
Absolutely. And they make a really good point. It's not just about the grammar rules. It's about being able to use English to connect with people, to learn new things, even to advance your career.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about those of us who, maybe haven't quite reached that level of fluency yet? This episode does a good job of acknowledging those roadblocks, like the fear of making mistakes. I think we've all been there.
Oh, for sure. It's a huge hurdle, you know? And the host, Jason and Julia, they brought up this point about how constantly translating in your head can really slow you down.
Yeah.
It's like you're driving a car, but you're constantly checking the rear view mirror.
Yeah.
Like you're moving forward, but it's not smooth or efficient.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. They suggested, trying to think directly in English.
Right.
Even if it's just like, for small everyday tasks.
Exactly. And they really emphasize that consistency is key.
Yeah.
Even small steps can make a huge difference. If
Yeah.
you think about it, if you just dedicate 15 minutes a day to practicing English, that adds up to over 90 hours a year.
Wow, that's a lot when you put it like that.
It is right.
I mean, listening to this deep dive totally counts as practice, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is immersion. Yeah. And they talked about other ways to immerse yourself, too, like switching your phone settings to English.
Yeah.
Or surrounding yourself with English media. Like, you don't have to live abroad to create that immersive environment.
Right. Okay, so we've got consistency, we've got immersion.
Yeah.
What other actionable steps do they recommend?
Well, they talked about finding a speaking partner, even if it's just for, like, casual conversation. And they really emphasize the importance of active practice.
Yeah.
Speaking, writing, even just thinking aloud in English.
Makes sense.
And there's tons of apps and platforms now that can connect you with other language learners.
Right. It's like any skill, the more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly. And speaking of exciting new ways to practice, this episode really dives into some of the trends and tools that are transforming language learning.
Oh, yeah?
They're especially excited about AI-powered language tutors
Okay.
and virtual reality simulations.
Those sound incredible. Can you give us some specific examples?
Yeah, so imagine you're having a conversation with an AI that can analyze your pronunciation
Wow.
and give you feedback in real time.
Okay.
That's what apps like ChatGPT are capable of now.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's like having a personal language coach right in your pocket.
That is mind-blowing. And what about virtual reality?
So imagine practicing your English skills in a VR simulation, or
Okay.
like maybe a London cafe or a New York business meeting.
Wow.
That immersive environment can really help you build confidence and fluency.
I can already picture myself confidently ordering a cappuccino in that virtual London cafe.
Right.
Okay, so this is all incredibly exciting,
Yeah.
but it also feels like a lot to take in. So how do they recommend staying motivated throughout this whole process?
Well, one key point they make is that fluency is a journey, not a destination. It's about enjoying the process, celebrating the small wins, and not getting discouraged by setbacks.
That's so important. It's easy to get caught up in the end goal and forget to appreciate the progress we make along the way.
Absolutely. And they also remind us to focus on our why.
Or why?
Yeah. Like, why are we learning English in the first place?
Makes
What are we hoping to achieve?
Right.
Keeping that purpose in mind can really help us push through those challenges.
I think that's a really powerful point. Our motivation ultimately comes from within.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of fluency, the barriers we face, and some actionable steps to overcome those barriers. But we've only scratched the surface of all the exciting tools and trends they discuss in this episode.
Right. There's a lot more to unpack.
There is a lot more to unpack, so
I'm
can't wait to dive deeper into those in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into achieving fluency in English.
We're ready to unpack some more of those cool strategies, and I think we're moving beyond, just the grammar and vocabulary stuff now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, this episode highlights a technique called shadowing. Have you ever tried that?
To be honest, I haven't. What is shadowing?
So basically, you listen to a native speaker
Okay.
and you repeat what they say. You try to mimic their pronunciation, their intonation, even their rhythm.
So it's like you're their shadow. You're trying to mirror them perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah. And it might feel a little awkward at first, but it's a great way to internalize those nuances of spoken English
Yeah.
that can really make you sound more fluent.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like training your tongue and your brain to produce the sounds naturally.
Right.
Did they have any other practical tips like that?
Yeah, one that stood out to me was focusing on phrases and sentences
Okay.
instead of just individual words.
Okay.
Because, words can take on different meanings depending on the context.
Oh, for sure. It's like learning to cook a dish instead of just knowing the individual ingredients.
I love that analogy.
You need to understand how they all work together.
Exactly. You need to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And they had some really interesting insights about vocabulary acquisition, too.
Yeah.
It's not just about memorizing lists of words. It's about active recall.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
So that's like testing yourself
Yeah.
instead of just passively reviewing
Exactly.
flashcards, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because when you actively try to remember something, you're strengthening those connections in your brain.
Yeah. It's like giving your brain a workout.
Right. And they also mentioned spaced repetition.
Oh,
Have you heard of that?
yeah.
So that's basically reviewing words at increasing intervals
Okay.
to help you remember them long term.
So you might review a word a few minutes after learning it, and then a few hours later, and then a day later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It helps your brain retain the information better.
It's amazing how these little tweaks to the way we learn can make such a big difference.
I know. It's fascinating, right?
Yeah. So, I think it's time to get back to some of those exciting tools and trends that they were talking about.
Yeah.
We touched on AI and virtual reality earlier, but I'm really curious about those online communities and platforms.
Yeah. They highlighted some websites like italki, HelloTalk, and Tandem,
Okay.
which connect you with native speakers or other learners for language exchange.
You could be like having a conversation with someone in England while you're sitting in a cafe in Argentina.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
It's a fantastic way to practice speaking and get feedback from native speakers.
Yeah, for sure. And they also mentioned some discussion groups
Yeah.
on platforms like Discord and Reddit.
Yeah, those are great for practicing your writing and
Um,
connecting with other language learners in a more casual way.
It's really amazing how technology has opened up all these new possibilities for language learning.
It really has. And we can't forget about the advancements in speech recognition technology.
Oh, yeah. Those are really impressive.
Right. So many apps now can analyze your pronunciation and give you really detailed feedback.
Yeah.
It's like having a pronunciation coach in your pocket.
It really is incredible how personalized language learning has become.
It is. And then, of course, there's gamified learning.
Oh, yeah. The apps that make it feel like a game.
Exactly. Like Duolingo and Memrise.
Yeah.
They use challenges and rewards and storylines to keep you motivated.
It's like turning language learning into an adventure.
Right. And then there's microlearning,
Okay.
those bite-sized lessons that you can fit into even the busiest schedule.
They mentioned the podcasts like this one.
Yes.
Is a great example of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can listen to them while you're commuting or exercising or doing chores.
Perfect. It's all about making it accessible.
Right. And then finally, they talked about adaptive learning platforms.
Okay.
These platforms use AI to tailor the learning experience to your individual needs.
So it's like the platform adapts to you as you go.
Exactly. It's like having a custom-designed language course
Right.
that evolves as you learn.
With all of these tools and resources, it seems like anyone can achieve fluency.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But Jason and Julia reminded us that motivation is still key.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even with the best tools in the world, you still need that drive to succeed.
Exactly. They said it again. Fluency is a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
It's about enjoying the process and celebrating those little victories along the way.
It's like climbing a mountain. You need to enjoy the climb itself, not just focus on reaching the summit.
That's a great way to put it. And they also emphasize the importance of remembering your why.
Right, our why.
Why are you learning English?
Yeah.
What are you hoping to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
When you have that clear purpose in mind, it can really help you stay motivated.
Definitely. And they also cautioned against comparing yourself to others
Right.
because everybody learns at their own pace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Comparisons can be so discouraging.
Yeah. It's your journey,
Yeah.
your unique path to fluency.
And most importantly, they remind us to have fun,
Yes.
find what works for you,
Yeah.
experiment, enjoy the process.
Because when you're having fun, you're more likely to stick with it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about all these amazing tools and resources for practicing and improving your English.
Yeah.
But Jason and Julia also had some really thought-provoking ideas about how learners can actually create their own content in English.
Yeah.
And we briefly touched on that earlier, but I'm excited to delve deeper into that concept in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so welcome back to our final part of this deep dive. And I'm really intrigued by this idea of creating your own content in English.
Yeah, it's definitely something Jason and Julia are passionate about. They really believe it can help you move beyond just understanding the language
Yeah.
and start to really own it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of counterintuitive at first, right? Like if you're still learning, wouldn't you want to just focus on consuming content that's made by fluent speakers?
Right. That's the traditional way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
But they argue that when you're creating something, you're engaging with the language on a whole other level.
So it's like instead of just understanding the meaning, you're actually using the grammar,
Yeah.
the vocabulary, the structure.
Exactly. You're putting it all together.
Yeah.
And in the process, you're going to discover those gaps in your knowledge,
Right.
which can then guide your future learning.
So it becomes like this cycle of learning and improvement.
Yeah.
That's cool. So what kind of content are they suggesting people create?
Well, they're pretty open-ended about it,
Okay.
which is great. It could be anything from writing a blog post to recording a short video, even starting your own podcast in English.
Wow. Okay. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be really challenging, but also super rewarding.
Right. And they emphasize that it doesn't have to be perfect,
Yeah.
especially when you're first starting out. The important thing is to just start creating.
Right. Just get those creative juices flowing.
Exactly. Get comfortable expressing yourself in English.
And you might be surprised by what you discover about yourself along the way.
Yeah, maybe you'll find that you're a great storyteller.
Yeah.
Or that you have a real passion for sharing your culture with others.
I love that.
Okay.
So for those of us who are listening and are now like, all right, I want to do this, where do we even begin?
Well, I think the best advice is to start small.
Okay.
Focus on something you're already interested in.
Okay.
So if you love cooking,
Maybe you make a short video demonstrating your favorite recipe in English. Or if you're really into photography, you could share some of your pictures online with captions written in English.
So it's about combining your existing passions with your language learning goals.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. Find what works best for you.
Yeah.
The key is to make it fun.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into speaking fluent English in 2025, what's like one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, Jason and Julia are so enthusiastic, and I think their main message is that you can do this. You are capable of achieving fluency.
Yeah.
The tools and the resources and the communities are all out there.
Right.
The missing piece is your commitment and your belief in yourself.
I love that. This has been such an inspiring journey.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling motivated to try some of this stuff myself.
I am too. Remember, fluency isn't this distant goal. It's a journey, and you just have to take it one step at a time.
One step at a time.
And every step brings you closer. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
You're welcome.
We'll catch you on the next one.